gives me a fright. No better than the beast hiding underneath. It's you.
Hello, everybody. Galen, you are now unmuted also.
Woo!
Woohoo!
Success.
It's us. It is us. It is indeed us. Thank you for being here. Welcome to the return of Your Brand, Your Business here on StreamerSquare. I can't really say return. We were here less than a week ago.
I was going to say, it was Monday.
Monday we were here, although it was kind of we were being featured on the other show here on StreamerSquare, which is called the Stream Scene. Another great show, which you guys should be following. Whereas Galen and I can kind of give professional advice and speak to our professional experience. If you're a content creator and you want to learn from fellow content creators, that's the show you should be watching. You should watch this show too, but watch that one also. So that is the Stream Scene is where Loco and Hunter, every week they bring on two guests who are fellow content creators and they talk about different things that are related to streaming also, or the business of streaming. So we talk a lot about the legal and the business side, and coming from, as advisors, where they're talking about, it's like learning from your fellow small business owners who are in the same industry, right?
Yep.
So that is, we're your small business advisors, they're your peers.
And with that note of we're your small business advisors, let's do the disclaimer.
Exactly. The disclaimer. Yeah. My favorite part. Obviously, Galen and I are both licensed professionals. I'm legal, Galen's business. That doesn't mean we're your licensed professionals. We can be, but we just may not be yet. Any information that we provide as part of Your Brand, Your Business is done for a general educational purpose. We do it because we want to help others to be more comfortable with these, what can be, somewhat murky, mysterious tasks or issues that people have to deal with as a small business owner, right? Hence the name. Again, your brand is your business, so you are a small business owner. As a content creator, as a streamer, whatever you want to call yourself, as an influencer even, you are the goods and you are the business. We're here to help you by providing education, which can hopefully in turn lead to you being more comfortable dealing with the complex side of the behind the scenes or off-camera stuff. Still, having said that, check out the disclaimer tag. This is legal and tax information. It is not legal and accounting advice. Okay, and with that goes to my second favorite part of the show after the disclaimer. It's Galen's recap of last time.
And I guess at this time we're going to do last time as in Monday.
Yes, and it's last time on the Stream Scene.
All right, yeah. Previously on the Stream Scene. Had to think about that for a sec. We talked about work-life balance. So Loco and Hunter had us on talk about work-life balance, both from what we've seen with clients as well as what we've experienced as small business owners ourselves. They weighed in a whole bunch with their very practical experience on it. And actually, this was kind of an extension of the original TwitchCon panel that launched this show. Hunter,
yes.
Hunter was our streamer translator, basically, where Joel and I were talking as we normally do. And then Hunter was coming in with and on a I've lived it level, here's what it looks like. We sort of had an extension of that. I felt like it was a pretty good show. We had, a lot of talk of our own personal experiences with it. And obviously when you're going through something yourself, it'll be different than someone else's experience. But I think a lot of the sort of general subjects that we talked about are really helpful concepts to keep in mind. So we talked about how work-life balance doesn't mean work and life are 50-50. We talked about how some people have different styles of work-life balance, where some people are really good to do, a full sprint on work for a period of weeks, sometimes even months, and then take a bunch of time off, as opposed to, so their balance is time off, time on over long periods of time, not like, balancing it within a single day or week. Talked about sort of the importance of remembering, as we've talked about a bunch before on this show, that since you are a streaming business and not a, say, manufacturing business, you need to make sure that you're maintaining the goods, which is you. So, if you're someone who needs time off so that when you are on you're able to be engaging, interesting, focused, all those kinds of things, you should take the time off. Even if it means less time streamed, it might mean more effective time streaming. And I've actually found that to be true of myself as well. I've gotten better about realizing, and then we talked about this on the show, but realizing that if I'm having a day where I'm just totally not productive for whatever reason, that I should take some time off to divert myself and then come back to it when I'm in a better mindset. Some days that's like take some time off in the middle of the day to, watch YouTube or play some games or something like that. Sometimes it's nap for an hour, if I just got a bad night's sleep or something like that, and that's why I'm not focusing. And Joel had a couple things too in terms of how he balances his off days.
Yeah, and for me right now, my off days are uh, they're pretty much off days because it's required that I take care of other stuff, right? And so now I have a young baby at home, so now it's just the kind of things that you have to deal with otherwise. But to me, like the biggest thing that taught me about work-life balance was that there has to be a lot more efficiency going on, right? So you just because I had a kid, I didn't get an extra 4 hours per day. No, I have the same 24 hours per day. I just had another extra 4 hours of stuff I needed to do. So I had to find that time somewhere. And that was making, that's talking about the efficiency. So my favorite portion of the last show was where we discussed, you know, systems and tools that allow for automation or for better habits and stuff like that help you make your time more efficient. That's what I'm, not necessarily what I do well. And admittedly, it is what I don't do well, right? But that's an area that I'm trying to improve to kind of make sure that the work-life balance is, I guess it's almost a little counterintuitive where you're trying to making your work more efficient, but the end goal of that is that you can do less work and have more time for the life side of the balance.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so a lot of the, and also on the show, Hunter had discussed kind of your vision or what's your mission or goal behind having work-life balance. Why do you need work-life balance? So as Galen mentioned already, you need work-life balance, especially if you're a content creator, because you are the goods. You're both the manufacturing plant and you are the goods. So you need to take care of that. So one, you actually can create the content you need to, and two, your content will be good, right? So that it's kind of double fold for you guys as content creators. This is kind of leaning a little bit into our topic today, which is, of course, building your brand and also knowing your worth. We're going to spend the first part of the show talking about building your brand. The second part of the show will be talking about knowing your worth. So for building your brand, this is a continuation of the business hygiene theme here on Your Brand, Your Business. So when we were talking on the work-life balance stuff, that was also a business hygiene theme. Our ongoing series of business hygiene episodes, which if you can catch the VODs here on StreamerSquare, they're all available. We had talked about stuff before, including what your business philosophy is, developing personal relationships or professional relationships to help you in your business, organization. All of these themes topics are going to be reoccurring throughout the theme, including today. So a lot of our stuff when we're talking about building your brand and how to kind of, organize your business to be a better business, really, so that you can do more, it will fall back into, you need some organization, you need some professional relationships, and the first step is you need to know what your actual business philosophy and business plan are. And that's kind of where Galen will discuss, because he's written a lot extensively about this on his blog, which definitely we'll link you the blog later on throughout the show, is that you need to kind of have a end goal or objective. It's not even really an end goal, right? You need to have a ongoing goal. Let's call it that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's not like something that you hit and then you stop. Or even if it is, maybe it's something that you hit and then you stop. That means at that point you need to reevaluate, revision, perhaps. Not like revise, but like revision what it is you're looking to do. So we definitely have talked about this before, and like we said, Hunter really hit on this a lot in the previous episode. But one of the really important things to do when you're starting out building your business, once you've decided I want to build this as a business and this isn't just like a hobby that I'm going to do because it's fun, is to figure out what you want it to be. So for instance, one of the really common for just to move it over to my industry for a bit, one of the really interesting things about financial planning firms is that with technology and the ability to bring on staff to help and things like that, you have an interesting choice that a lot of people reach without ever having thought of before, which is, do I want a lifestyle practice, which is a business where I can earn a decent income from it? I tend to be the lead, potentially only advisor, and I've got some support staff. And I have a client base where I'm busy but not overwhelmed. And basically, I just I just get to live a kind of nice life. I've got a business that I like. I'm not pushing myself too hard. I'm earning a decent income. Or do you want to grow a firm, which is much more like bringing on other advisors, always looking for growth, going more on the management side as opposed to having your day to day being just the just being client work. And those are two very different visions, right? And if you were to talk about how you'd build a business to satisfy one or the other of those visions, they'd start off the same, but eventually they'd branch, and they'd branch pretty significantly. Similarly, with streamers, and again, we talked about this before, streamers, broadcasters, influencers, content creators, so many terms. I wish there was one agreed upon one. But as streamers, you can sort of ask yourself the same thing of, do I want a business where I'm earning an income, where I'm happy and I'm enjoying what I'm doing day to day, and that's all I'm looking for? Or am I looking to grow a bit more of an empire, essentially? Am I looking to become like a brand that's known a little more broadly, where it's not, hey, I'm streaming, I've got my viewers, I get subs, tips, bits, all those kinds of things. But is it like, expanding into, and I'm building out bots that are useful for my channel, but I plan to expand and sell potentially to other people? Am I building up a stream team? Am I collaborating with other broadcasters? Am I building out a big merchandise line, right? All of those kinds of things, or even just moving into other sort of facets of entertainment. So you really want to start anything when you're building up your business with what is the end goal? And that can change. That's fine. You may go with a certain goal in mind for 3 years and then reevaluate and say, you know what, I thought that's what I wanted and I don't. And that's fine. But you want to at least be working towards something so that you can help yourself make decisions, as opposed to just starting out being like, I want a business and I'm going from here.
And I think it's
sorry.
this is well, I was just going to say that because all the stuff that you're mentioning right now is great, and it's kind of you're hitting on a lot of points that we're also like we had discussed that we will discuss later on, including the whole need for reevaluation and reassessment and adaptability in your business plan. Typically, this is a step that you would want to take even before you actually start streaming, right? So people, like everyone says, I bought a webcam, now what, right?
Right.
If you were talking to Galen or myself, we would say, you bought a webcam, now write your business plan, and then you can start streaming, right? And that's not necessarily the case.
Want to do it as a business.
Yeah, assuming you wanted to go into the business. If you wanted to do this just as a hobby, that's perfectly fine, right? Know that it is a hobby, and sometimes your hobby can evolve later on, which at that point, that is kind of when I would say you need to go ahead and kind of revisit the idea of making a business plan. Even if you didn't have one and you already have a sizable channel or sizable following, a business plan and business philosophy is something you need to revisit. It's not you write it and then you set it and you forget it, right? This is something that you write it, you revisit it very often, and you're constantly going back saying, what's changed? How have I changed since this all started? How has the industry all changed since this started? And there's quite a lot of other different different considerations that you need to make.
So, well, yeah, I mean, look at very successful streamers like Day9 or Professor Broman, who started off being, Professor Broman was a Destiny streamer, right? Day9 was a StarCraft guy, and now they do completely different things. Like, even though they grew their really impressive brands on one game, times changed. right? The Destiny community moved on. Destiny 2 didn't end up being what people were hoping it was going to be. Day 9 sort of expanded beyond StarCraft. It's totally fine to have those things change later, but you want to be focusing your efforts on what's relevant for you at the time.
Yes, and that's very much so. And to kind of give you guys a little bit of context, aside from just doing the stuff we do in a professional basis, whether that's finance or law, I have previous experience also doing stream management, right? As I was a co-founder and co-manager of a stream team. Galen, through his clients, that he has a lot of content creator clients, he also helps advise them on a variety of issues, not just finance, because those are kind of, he takes a very holistic approach, if you will, of determining, well, how does my mental well-being as a business owner affect my finances? How does the overall industry affect my finances? So these are why these topics are important to us. These topics are sources of passion for us, and kind of where our background and I don't want to say expertise, because I wouldn't call us experts by any means in this, but we're not unfamiliar with it either.
Yeah.
Right. So I will say some of kind of the stepping stones you want to, or stumbling blocks rather, that you want to avoid when you're developing this business philosophy or business plan. The biggest one I would probably say is people who see other people streaming and saying, I could do that. And then they say all they do is play video games for a living and then go in and do it, right? Galen and I are not streamers by any means, but that doesn't mean we haven't tried streaming video games before. Like, I've done it, and I will admit I've done it just out of, sheer curiosity, wanting to experiment. I had a game that I wanted to play. I figured, hey, why don't I just turn on the stream in the same time? It is not easy by any means. It is by any stretch of the imagination. I feel like for me, and maybe it's just my personal nature or what I've studied in my background, for me, it's so much easier drafting a contract than trying to stream. Right?
Well, yeah, I mean, part of that's definitely what you've studied.
Yeah, but it's just like to be naturally outgoing, naturally entertaining, having to captivate someone's attention for hours on end, no matter what game you're playing, and to be able to do it consistently over a variety of games, that is extremely impressive to me. So
yeah,
I will I guess the summary of all that, or the reason I bring all of that up, is to say the idea that streaming is an easy job and a lucrative job is not what should be at the core of your business plan. If that is what the core of your business plan is, I would highly advise you to reconsider and to reevaluate everything.
That's like saying, oh, I'm just going to move to Hollywood and get an acting career and make my millions.
Exactly, right? I have a pretty face. I could do exactly what everybody else does. You know what? Everybody else in LA has a pretty face too, right? So
I live near LA. Yeah. A lot of our waiters here are very talented actors. And very pretty.
Yeah. So, that's to say, like, we're not trying to actively discourage you, but it only gets more competitive from here on out. You have things like the Twitch affiliate program now, where I just saw that the Twitch affiliate program just reached its first anniversary, so its first birthday. That 1 year, they had signed up over 220,000 affiliates, right? Those are people who already have a sub button, have at least one emote, and can have monetization, right? The barrier is not high at any means to be an affiliate. Hell, Galen and I are affiliates, right? So
still have not made that emote.
The steps that are available to you certainly are there, right? The means are there, but that's not to say that the ease of which you can become an affiliate is the ease of which you can make content creation a viable, even part-time living, right?
Oof. Although I did see recently on Twitter someone who was an affiliate say they were going full-time, and that made me flinch a bit. I hope they have other things going on.
Yeah, and I sincerely hope that they have other means. So like a supporting partner or anything else, or really like that, who knows? Maybe they do have some very generous benefactors, or they don't have a lot of financial needs, right? I can tell you right now, there is no way I'd be able to make it as a full-time affiliate, right? Bits, you need a lot of bits to pay for baby food. Let me tell you that, right? So,
and pay for baby food 60 days later.
Yes, yeah. And so that's not even, and we're talking about just affiliates. Twitch partners are now over 30,000, right? Think about that.
Wow, really?
How many? Yeah, and partnership is a pretty high bench. So even if you hit the partnership bench, that's by no means any guarantee of full-time success, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of why the reason we, not to be, overly cynical or Debbie Downers or anything like that, but the reason we bring this up is because these have to be, the monetary and the financial side cannot be your sole consideration in your business plan. Your business plan can't be stream equals make money, right? There's no step 1, buy webcam. Step 2, turn on, make a Twitch account. Step 3, profit, right? So profit is many, many, many steps down further the line.
Although that does lead well into the building the business plan piece of it. I mean,
yes,
one of the things you should be doing is financial projections as a part of your business plan. And those financial projections should be at least somewhat based off of people who have gone before you. So you should be going out talking to people who are, who started streaming 6 months ago, who started streaming a year ago, who started streaming 3 years ago, and their path won't be yours likely, but you can at least get some ideas. So like, one of the really helpful things for me was that for my financial planning firm, I'm a part of a group called the XY Planning Network, and they have a 650-ish firms, basically just like mine, where they're virtual firms, work on a monthly retainer, work with young professionals. And so I was able to draw on a lot of their data to do some of my projections. What is a reasonable fee range? What is a reasonable number of clients to expect to bring in each month? What is a reasonable amount to expect to spend in your first year? And sort of in what categories? And that made my projections a lot easier. And it's really hard to do projections without that kind of stuff, because you'll be sitting there and you'll hit a point being like, I don't fucking know. And you know what? That's fine. That is how it'll be. But you want to at least do a couple scenarios, maybe a, average, aspirational, and bad projection, and see if it works. See if it's worth it, right? Like for me, for my business, the sort of average in your first year is getting about a client a month. And you know what? I'm right about at that average, but it didn't come as one client lockstep every month. Came as, in an ongoing basis at least, it came as like no one, one, no one, 3, 4, 4, right? Like it wasn't just straight up lockstep that, but it still gave me a framework for seeing, okay, if I'm doing these kinds of projections and that's just the baseline assumption I'm going to use of like the average, what does that look like compared to the expenses I expect to have? Because for me, I had some hardware expenses. If I weren't working with, working virtually and working with online content creators, I wouldn't have this camera, this microphone, those lights, right? But if I were working with locals, I might have an office. So it helped me project out income versus expenses, which is a really important thing, because I was able to look at that and say, here's a rough approximation of what it'll look like year 1, 2, and 3, which was helpful for me, for my expectations, which was helpful for my wife, to have something be like, you aren't just, supporting Galen while he goes off and fucks around and does something fun. And then also, helpful for reevaluating, is this, I'm almost a full year into like officially having registered investment advisory. Is this working as I thought? Is it lining up? Is it doing better, doing worse? And what does that mean for future expectations? And that's been very valuable in a couple ways. One of which is just straight up, a client a month it often feels like you're doing a lot without much happening. But if I can compare back to, okay, that's the expectation, and I'm kind of at that, it's like, all right, okay. Like I laid this out. I know that's where it is. It's right about what I was expecting. And that leads to these other things. And it's also helpful for the, not expecting to be taking $3,000 out of the business every month starting day one.
Yeah.
Like knowing that you'd have to, eat not very expensively and live not very expensively and not travel and things like that. And it'll be the same for you when you're doing those kinds of spending plans.
Yeah. And I think Chap brings up a great point too. And you mentioned this earlier also. projections are important in that they kind of give you, and I would agree with you that to do like kind of
Oh,
a
yeah.
range of projections, right? You have a worst case, best case, and most likely case, right? So at the same time,
And it'll probably be none of those,
yeah,
like in
like
reality.
you have a range, right? So hopefully it's in the range at least, right? But
Hmm.
so um, my point is, and really chat's point rather, is that don't make these projections if you're basing them off of somebody else. Like, don't hold yourself too closely to those projections because that's exactly what they are. It's a projection. It's not an
Well, Ninja
actual.
streams Fortnite, and I'm going to stream
Yeah,
Fortnite. So,
yeah. Just because I'm not making $500,000 a year streaming Fortnite, that means I'm a failure because I'm not on the same level as Ninja, right? So,
yeah.
I mean, there's obviously there's going to be, if I'm starting a restaurant or I'm starting a roasting or a cafe or anything like that, I
Oh,
can't compare myself with Starbucks right off the bat, right? So my point is that you have to kind of have a best case, have a worst case, right? So plan for your worst case at least, right? So you have the you have the float, you have the emergency funds that you need in case things don't go
hmm
well. You have you know what to do to kind of improve. Um, and really, the why we said that both a business philosophy and a business plan, right? So the philosophy is your kind of course values, your statement, your beliefs. Those are why you're doing this. Your business plan is how you're going to do this, how you're going to evaluate what you're doing this. Um, you make those projections now, and later on they become a guide stick. They become a measurement that you can compare what your previous performance is or with what you had anticipated. So very much what Galen was talking about. Now that he's a year into his financial services or financial planning advising advisor role, I wasn't really sure how you would want me to kind of qualify that, but an
Any of
advisor
them is
role
fine.
now then has his previous year been in line with his projections and he can see what he needs to change if he needs to change anything at all and what's worked well, what hasn't worked well. So
Hmm.
that's all goes into building your brand. And I can't, if we did a survey of like, let's just pick 100 partners at random and did a survey of how many people did even this kind of thinking, whether you wrote it down, whether you kind of actually typed it out, which I think that would have been the best, or even if this was just kind of like a middle of the night thought, how many of those partners that we surveyed would actually have done this? I would
If Hunter was
wager
in
it
the
would be,
sample, one.
what was
And if
that?
not, I said if Hunter was in the sample, one. And if not, zero.
Yeah, so Hunter is a good friend of ours, and I know the reason we brought him on the panel is because we know that he did this kind of thinking, right? So I I might be a little bit more optimistic about our our streamers in general. So, but I would still not say more than 10%, right?
Hmm.
So, um, that when in reality, this is something that upwards of 90% should be doing. And
Yeah.
to kind of give you a illustration, if you were looking at streaming as a traditional business and you needed to go out and secure a loan to start your business, every single bank would require that you have a business plan and that you show them what that business plan is, right? Before you can get a loan. Because they're not just going to give out money they always have their recourses. Like they can always go after your other assets or whatever if you don't pay their loan, right? The bank always has recourses, but even then they are that paranoid, if you will, and justifiably so, with their money to
They
make sure
have a
that
lot of
it
experience with new businesses.
exactly right. So, um, and it's like when we're talking about these kind of things, I think it's some of the advice I gave to the clients sometimes is like just go check out the resources that are available already for small businesses. While your
Hmm.
small business is very unique, and a lot of my clients don't even think that they have a small business. When here's the blunt truth: you have a small business, no doubt about it. Right? You have to pay taxes as a small business owner. You're a small business, so just go look at some of the advice and resources that are available out there for other small businesses. There's a small business. What's the SBA stand for? Small Business Administration.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a small business administration part of the U.S. government, right?
SBA.gov.
That
They've got a
has
ton of awesome
advice. Yeah,
resources.
it has a lot of great resources out there. Maybe 50% of it would apply to you, but even then, that's really good information.
Yeah, super good.
Yeah,
Yeah. Um,
but
I mean, I'd say too, another piece on your planning that we've talked about besides like income and spending projections and this sort of goes back to your vision of it, um, is an exercise that I really like from a book called The E Myth, which E in this case stands for entrepreneur, so the entrepreneur myth. But it's the idea that you use your vision to find to put together what you want your end goal ish business to look like, right? So if you want to be again, speaking from the financial planning perspective, if I want to be a solo shop, maybe the end vision is there's me and a junior advisor slash paraplanner who does like back office planning work and an admin, and that's it, right? But if I want to be a firm owner, maybe there's me in a management role, or even if, well, let's just say it this way. Maybe so in the original one, there's a senior advisor, junior advisor, admin. Maybe in the firm, there is a CEO or manager type and a chief technology officer and a chief marketing officer, 5 or 6 senior advisors, each supported by a junior advisor too, and then 4 or 5 admin staff plus an investment office, right? Those all look very different. But the exercise first from the E-Myth is map that out. Second is write your name in every spot. If you're the small business right now, you're doing all of those jobs. But then, and also write a job description for them. But then as time goes on, you know where you need to slot people in. And you can plan around what kinds of things do you like to do in the business. So I know some planners who really like the planning side of things. So they've hired someone to be a CEO of the firm, even though they're the owner. I know other people who really like that kind of CEO activity, and they hire planners to do the planning work. And, it'll be a little different for a streaming business, but the idea is really go through that exercise of from the vision piece, what does the business look like, and what are the different roles? Because then that also helps you plan with outsourcing. Once it comes time to outsource, you can say, all right, this is a discrete task or set of tasks that I can pass off to someone else. And you could pass it off by hiring them, potentially like a business manager, or you could pass it off by like hiring them into the business, or you could pass it off by sending it to a contractor. So like you don't have to be a remote artist, or you don't have to make your own scenes, or you don't have to do your own accounting potentially, right? But actually going through that exercise helps you put together that piece, that sort of future piece. And then you can use that when you're doing your projections of, maybe once my projection shows I'm going to be making this much in revenue, that's when I outsource this piece. Maybe it's not practical before then. Or maybe it's something that you do right from the start.
Yeah.
As long as you're planning around it, again, none of your plans will end up exactly as you write them down on paper. But as long as you're planning on it, you have an idea that these things are things that might need to be changed, that these are things that you might be able to influence in some way without having to actually have yourself be doing it. And that's a big deal. Another piece, I think, from that vision side is looking at an actual schedule. So, if you've got a projection for year one in terms of income and spending, and you've got a vision for what the business will be, say, in a year, you also want to just look at what are you going to be doing over that year? Are you going to be someone who's just playing one game? Are you someone who's going to be a variety streamer? If you're going to be a variety streamer, what are the games that you're going to play over the course of the year? What are the releases that are coming out? What do you have to do in terms of prep work for those releases? Again, looking at Hunter and HB Fox, his business manager, my God, they put a lot of work into new major releases to make sure that they've got scenes set up, alerts set up, giveaways set up, that they're incorporating it with sort of some of their other media. It's a crazy amount of stuff that they do, but then it leads to really successful events. And then they can point to those events for future releases and say, hey, hey, gaming company, we do such an awesome job of this. It's worth it for you to sponsor us, or it's worth it for you to give us copies of the game, or it's even worth it for you to give us, to fly us out so we can be there for launch day and be like, this is so cool.
Yeah, I mean,
it's that prep work and planning that lets them do that.
Yeah, we're all gamers at heart, right? So think about it this way. If you're a fan of a big MMO and you know that there's a new raid coming out next week, what do you spend the preceding week doing? Well, if you're like most other gamers, you spend that week buffing up your characters, making sure you have all the right gear to come out for that raid, or what researching that raid, trying to figure out what information might be out there. This is that. This is that, except it's
probably, if it's WoW, you're on the PTRs doing the raid.
Yeah, right. This is that for your. Unfortunately, you don't get a IRL PTR, right? There's no public test for your real life stuff. This
That'd be amazing.
Yeah, you don't get a do over there, unfortunately, right? So, but this is what you need to be doing for the prep for your business for the next stage, right?
Yep.
We gave you a lot of advice in the very beginning about what's applicable for small business owners, because that's the first step, right? You need to address all of those things first, and then you have to talk about your industry specific things, which is your content creation. If you're a streamer and a variety streamer, you have to figure out what games are coming out, what's going to be trending in the next month, in the next 2 months, what can I capitalize on, right? So even if some games don't necessarily live up to all of the hype, you know that the hype is going to be there. People are going to jump onto Twitch to check it out, to see what this game is. It's the same goes if you're a YouTuber, right? If you're a YouTube creator, what's the flavor of the month right now for your specific YouTube field, right? If you are a lifestyle YouTuber, then is there a certain trend that is going on that everyone wants to get into, and trying to figure that out, whether that's, I don't know, let's just say keto diets or something like that. Not to say that those are trends or fads or anything, but if that's an incredibly popular thing right now, then is that something you want to explore? Or really, if you're a lifestyle person, then kind of now it's summertime, so now you're trying to get your beach body ready if you're a fitness YouTuber, or trying to figure out what's the best vacation spots, what are some good summer drinks, summer activities, this kind of stuff. Seasonality is a big portion of it, and we're actually going to talk about seasonality later because it affects the flip side of it, which is knowing your worth, monetizing your brand, all of that stuff too. But what we're trying to say is you can't adequately plan for any of that monetization portion if you don't have a plan in place for your business already, right? So that's why, like, as a streamer, as any self-employed individual, your calendar should be one of your go-to things every single day to figure out what's coming out, what do you need to address in the future. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying my calendar's a big deal for me in terms of planning out what I'm going to be doing in a given week or a given month. That's all.
Unfortunately, streaming is just one of those things where you can't really. A lot of people think it's low effort, when in reality, if this is something that you want to be,
it's crazy high effort.
A successful business, you should realistically expect that you will be spending at least a half hour offline for every hour that you spend online of work. And realistically, I'll probably even say that, like, at the minimum, you should be spending at least half as much time off camera doing stuff for your business as you do spend on camera. Where I think, like, if you get to I'd even argue this. I'd argue that for the people who are at the top of the streaming game or content creation game, they're probably spending twice as much time off camera as they are on camera, because they know that that's how they actually get, they grow their business, right? That's how they effectively monetize their business. And this is a little bit foreshadowing, but we're going to be talking about brand deals, right? Brand deals versus, advertising revenue, brand deals and sponsorships versus just, subscriptions and tips and donations and whatnot. Or I shouldn't say donations, tips and bits rather. Yeah. But before we get into that portion of it, though, and that section of the show, today's episode, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about, now that you have this plan, and we did talk about this a little bit at the beginning before, but now we kind of just to bring it up again because it's that important, reevaluating and adjusting your plan and your philosophy as an ongoing practice. Again, this is why we're in the business hygiene theme. Any hygiene habit is something that you need to do continuously. You need to do it as a, what do we say again? What's the magic word or magic figure? 3 weeks to like 9 months, something like that.
There's for some reason I have 18 weeks in my head. I'm not sure why.
Yeah.
I don't know where that's coming from,
I
but
want to
yeah,
say like 210 days, which is
a long time.
something similar to, yeah. So, but
Mhm.
anyway, just say, let's just say 3 weeks to 9 months. That's how long it'll take for a habit to, ferment itself as an actual habit, right?
Mhm.
For me, I can definitely tell you, I'm probably closer to the 9 month side than the 3 week side. Those people who are able to do something continuously for 3 weeks and then have it become a lifelong habit, I am very envious of them, right? So, but that's my point exactly. So, as a point of reevaluating and readjusting your business plan and your business philosophy, make sure you're doing that continuously so you get into the habit of doing that. I'm not saying you need to look at your business plan and business philosophy every single day, because this is one habit where you probably don't need to do it that continuously, right? Do it
It
on
would
a
be bad to
monthly
do it that
basis.
continuously, I think.
Yeah. There
You
is
should set up a habit for it. But if you were to do it like every day or even every week, not enough time would have changed. You'd just be basically at that point jerking off. Like there's not an actual, well, there's not like time for there to be meaningful change. So if you're trying to say like, oh, did the things I projected work over that period of time? Like, no, they didn't. You didn't actually give it the time to move forward. And if you're so flighty that you're changing that much every week, maybe this isn't the kind of thing for you. Because you need to actually give things time to happen. Like that's all I'll say. You need to give things time to happen. So I'm trying to think like I try and quarterly, so every 3 months, reevaluate my projections, at least my financial projections. Um, Only because there are some parts of my business that are more sporadic, I guess I'd say. Like I do a lot of student loan planning work, and those are one-time engagements, but they come in seemingly seasonally, like and all in clumps. Like I'll go 1 month where I might have one of those clients, and then the next month 3 people will come to me, and I have no idea why 3 people came to me that month. It's not like there's some deadline or something like that that they have to be aware of. So I try and evaluate those kinds of things about quarterly. Um, in terms of like the actual business philosophy piece, well, I'm coming up on my first year, and that's going to be an annual thing for me. Again, because you just need the time to let it ride.
Yeah, and there's also such a thing as too much planning, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
right.
doing too much planning and not enough work.
Exactly. Yeah. So you need to actually implement those plans too. So
Yeah.
if you're constantly reevaluating, you're not going to have anything to reevaluate, right? So
Yeah.
make sure. So notice that I say that the two key operative words here are constantly versus continuously, right?
Mhm.
So don't do it continuously where you're all. Well, okay, sorry. You should do it continuously where you're doing it like on an ongoing basis, but don't do it constantly where that's all
Yeah.
you're doing.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
I think the sort of last, well, I'd say one of the things that's hard to do when it comes to this reevaluating. Well, okay, 2 points. First is something that'll make it a lot easier to do some of these reevaluations. And then part of the harder side of doing the reevaluation. One thing that'll make your evaluation a lot easier is if you're actually doing some of the things that we've talked about on previous shows, like actually maintaining your accounting for your business. Um, because it's a lot easier to do financial projections if you know how much money you've made and how much you've spent. So do early on engage in those kinds of activities that we've talked about on the hygiene side. Start when there's less to do because it just gets easier and then you get experience as opposed to trying to do it when you're already like complex. Um, the thing that is a little harder is the reevaluating where you are like personally and sentiment wise, because those are harder to put an objective number on, right? Am I feeling optimistic about business and about wanting to grow a firm because things have been growing well recently, or am I feeling that way because I got a really good night's sleep and I woke up and my wife was in a good mood and that puts me in a good mood, right? Or is it, or am I super negative on my business because things have been kind of slow lately, or just chat activity hasn't been that high, right? Like, you do want to try and you want to try and account for those kinds of things when you're doing your own like personal reflection on the vision for the business, where it's not just tied up in exactly what's happening right now, but you're actually looking at the past year or the past quarter or whatever it was. Because that's something that I have found to be a little harder, right? Because I'm a solo business owner, my day to day mood dramatically impacts how I'm feeling about my day to day business. And that mood doesn't necessarily come from something that's relevant to the business. It could be I got a crappy night's sleep, or it could be, I got distracted by something. So I had coffee a little later. So now I have a bit of a headache, right? Like, or just I'm in a good mood today. I woke up on the right side of the bed. And so I'm super enthusiastic about everything. I have those days. Everyone does, I hope.
Yeah. Happy wife, happy life. Right.
Oh yes, gosh,
Yeah.
yes.
And as a small business owner, or a sole business owner, really, I guess both solo business owner. Let's call it that for now, right? Because not streamers aren't just small business, and usually they're solo business.
Yep.
That's definitely a concern, right? Even if you're not married, what I could just as easily say happy chat, happy life, right? So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't tell you how many times that I've heard streamers just get thrown off because they had bad chat, right? And especially that, unfortunately, that's like a something that goes hand in hand with the internet, right? So and there's a lot of things that kind of just, you have to be very thick-skinned when it comes to being a content creator, right? Because you're putting yourself out there, you're putting the goods out there, and if I'm making cups, right, and someone leaves me a bad review for a cup I have on Amazon, then like, yeah, you know what, that's going to affect me too. But then how much is it going to be more so when I am the actual cup, right? And then someone leaves me a bad review on, and not just on Amazon, but now they find your Twitter and they're leaving you bad reviews directly to you, right? Or they're messaging you, all that stuff. It can be extremely negative. And that's just kind of one of the things where you have to deal with that as part of a stream, which is why that work-life balance is so important. Sometimes you just need to get offline, right? Go find better resources or better distractions. And before we move into the kind of the knowing your worth side, right? There was a question in chat that was bringing up, well, how do I know when is a good time to start hiring people or start outsourcing? And this is, Galen touched upon it a little bit earlier, but I'm just going to give my take. That is a very personal question, in that it can depend largely on what you're comfortable with as a small business owner, right? Some people may want to outsource that stuff from the very beginning and think of it as startup cost, as an investment into their business. Some people, and if you're comfortable with that, like for example, I'm going to use Galen as an example because he's brought it up in chat before, where he does some of his own accounting because he has familiarity with it. He can very much do that because he's comfortable with it. He knows what he's doing, but he knows that at a certain point, then it would just be better to hire a CPA to do that stuff. Same goes for content creation. If you come from a creative background and you can make your own emotes, I would suggest you do that, right? Rather than outsourcing. If you can do your own video editing, why not you do that also? But at some point, hopefully at some point, it makes more sense to pay somebody to do that, and you continue to generate new content, because that new content is going to be worth more than whatever you're paying that video editor or that emo artist. The same goes for really any industry, right? When it comes to being a business owner. I know I had attended, and this is going a little bit off topic, but I attended a continuing legal education seminar a few months ago, and they're basically saying that as someone who is running your own firm, at some point you should be able to hire a more junior attorney and have them do that hourly work, because you are out there doing that business development, doing that marketing, which equates to more billable hours that you can then have somebody else do, right? And you can hire somebody else to do that. And that's applicable to most any small business, right? Because content creation is that weird thing where it's not quite a service business, but it's not quite a manufacturing business. Really, it's a kind of a blend of both, right? So you need to kind of take the best of both, or learn lessons from both sides of it, from professional service companies, from manufacturers, right? And you do see like the now that I think it's funny because you do see the best content creators out there now who are fully adopting that. They are still generating content, but now they're actually selling goods like coffee, t-shirts, and we're going to get into that now with knowing your worth, right? So this is kind of, you need to, and really, if anybody, this is probably the more tantalizing topic, right? Because everyone likes to talk about money, but you can't talk about money without knowing the other side of it first. You have to know the business side first, because that's the only way you're going to get to the money aspect. And you'll see that now when we discuss it. So for really the first thing to know when it comes to knowing your worth is to kind of figure out what monetization options are available to you, because they will change from brand new creator to you have a small community now to you have a large community now to now you're influencer mega status, right? So your monetization options will change as your business plan changes, and that's why the reevaluation is so important. So we'll talk about metrics later, and when I say metrics, it's because we're looking at a few things to kind of determine how it is that how much you can charge for sponsorships, how much you can charge for brand deals and whatnot. We can't talk about brand deals and sponsorships when nobody's going to be looking at you based off of your size, right? So when you're at a smaller size or starting out size, what are your options? And let's just be blunt. When you're just starting out, fully anticipate that you're going to be paying money out rather than receiving money in, right?
Yeah.
The paying money out those are your business startup costs. The equipment you need for streaming, and that includes not just the computer equipment and gaming equipment or whatever, but it also includes overlays, emotes, branding, all of that kind of stuff. I would say conservatively, you could probably expect to spend at least $250 to $500 for branding stuff, right? Depending on quality that you want to do. And then let's just say at least another, I don't know, a good gaming streaming rig will probably cost you at least $1,000, right? If you get sooner or later, you hope to get to that level where you have a streaming rig and a gaming rig, and that's just when your costs go up. But just to start off, I would say probably go for, especially if you don't have other means, independent means, then just kind of plan on starting off with just one rig.
Yeah. Well, and also I'd say audio. I can't imagine something that pushes me fast away from a small stream faster than crappy audio. Just because it makes the viewing experience less enjoyable, right? Can't hear the fan, can't hear game sounds, random beeps and shit like that make me think my computer's going weird. Like
this is where Galen and I can kind of speak not just as professionals in this industry, but also consumers of this industry, right? We're working. We're small business owners, so we tend to work a lot also. But that means we do have a stream on the side. Do you know what's important on the stream on the side? Audio, not video, right? So I have that on the lowest quality setting just to make sure I have bandwidth for other things, right? But then I have the audio up. I like Galen said, good audio makes a big difference because then you can leave it in the background, right? There's, and so we're not even talking into like kind of the gaming side now, or if you're a creative streamer, we're not even talking about the assets that you need for creating, like whether that's a tablet, whether that's canvas, or anything else. And even and that's not to say other forms of content creation don't have their own startup costs also. If you want to be an Insta model, what do you need? You need outfits, right? Depending on, we're not going to get into how much clothing you're wearing or how little clothing you're wearing, but you still need clothing of some kind, right? And then you need good lighting, you need a photographer, you need all this kind of stuff. You need aesthetics, right? Whether that's your hair, whether that's your makeup, or whatever it is you have, right? If you're a fitness content creator, then you need a gym membership, you need workout equipment, whatever, what have you. So those are all things, every industry has its own individual startup costs. So in the beginning, fully expect that you will need to pay out money first, right? Consider yourself lucky if within the first month you actually break even. I mean, if you're really like your first month, you bring profit, and then that's a very exceptional case, and you're definitely doing something really right, or you're doing something, or you're extremely lucky, right?
I've got something just for Jin right now. Here, listen to my stuff. In case you're wondering if the Blue Yeti picks up things, horrible about it.
Okay, and so that's kind of all right. So now that let's kind of skip forward a little bit. Let's not knock on wood, everything's going well. you have some following now, and then now you're getting to Twitch affiliate status, right? So now you have some monetization because you are able to get bits through Twitch, and you're able to get subscriptions through Twitch, right? Or if you're on, let's just call it YouTube, right? YouTube just made their stuff a little bit more difficult in that the YouTube partner program has higher barriers now, right? But then let's say you made it to the partner program, now you have monetization, right? Monetization of your videos, which is all based off ad revenue. You have to understand that at this level, sponsorship deals, while they are definitely more likely now than when you first started out, they're still pretty rare, right? This was a question asked earlier, how likely is it to get sponsored deals in the very beginning? And, Loco's in chat, and she's definitely someone that is able to answer these questions as a more established streamer, and it has somebody who has worked with a lot of professionals and does sponsored deals.
Well, and also important to note, a true sponsorship, right? There might be things that are called sponsorship deals, but what they're actually doing is like giving you a free key to a game, or it's an affiliate deal where you get a portion of a sale, for instance. Yeah. Those aren't sponsorships. A sponsorship is someone paying for your name.
Yes, right. Like where you're bringing in. Well, and I'd even argue that those deals, even affiliate deals and free keys, right, for free game keys, those still require a certain level, right? Those still require a certain level of affiliate deals. Not to write off affiliate deals, right? Guaranteed money is always nice. Affiliate deals have a higher threshold typically than guaranteed money, especially if you have a very loyal community that can drive conversion, right? And we're going to discuss these terms later also. But that's my point, right? These are the things that are available to you in the beginning. So what can you do to capitalize on what's available to you? You can kind of do your best to make sure you're generating good content that will incentivize people to actually tip you or to give you bits, right? You can, or if the reverse of that, or the flip side of that rather, is that make sure you have good content so people actually want to watch your content, which higher viewership, higher followers, that also in turn gets you closer to the other monetization levels, right? So this is all kind of like, think about it this way, you're building your customer base first, right? The first thing you need to do as a small business is to build your customer base first, and then you have to determine your actual sales, right? How do you build your sales off of that customer base? So everything is still sequential. And this is why we said, look to other industries and look to resources available to other industries, because there are more parallels than you think. One of the things that Galen and I are here to do is to help you draw those parallels, because we have experience in other industries. And then we are also intimately familiar with the business side of streaming and content creation, which is why we can help you draw those parallels and to know what advice is helpful, what advice is not, right? So these are the kind of these are the forms of monetization that are available in the beginning. So let's just say the first step really then is ad revenue. For most other platforms. For Twitch specific platform, it's bits and subscriptions once you hit affiliate.
Well, and tips even before that. I mean, theoretically, right?
Yeah,
I would argue that.
Yeah. So theoretically, you could always get a game wisp. You could always get a Patreon or something like that.
Or just Streamlabs. I mean.
Or Streamlabs and PayPal. Yeah. So you could always do tips of that sort before. There's differing schools of thought out there on whether or not you should at the very beginning, right? Like, so, and I'll be honest, if I'm coming across a new streamer who's a very relatively small streamer and I see that they're harping heavily on like trying to get tips and or supporting your Patreon or whatever without the content or without the experience to match it yet, that is very disenchanting, right? So you have to understand that there are those. That's why the startup cost is the thing. That's why in this panel that we talked about, Galen's awesome advice of doing a trial run, making sure you have the funds available to do this trial run. So you're not really, your trial run should be anticipating like how long can you go with absolutely zero revenue incoming, right? Well, sorry. That's not the same type as the trial run that Galen was talking about. But now we're talking about
that was for going full time.
Yeah, that's for going full time. But the idea of a trial run is something that is still applicable here, right? Don't quit your day job and expect to go into full time streaming, because that full time streaming is going to, right away, replace all of the income that you're lost as a day job, right? So that's what we mean by a trial run. think about it, really, you should have enough, ideally, at the minimum, 3 months of no income whatsoever from streaming. But so now let's go back to the monetization side and talk about, excuse me, talk about the second tier of what other monetization options are out there. Merchandise through platforms like Designed by Humans, through, and I guess this is a good good place for me to say, our opinions are not reflected by any of these other organizations that we're talking about, whether that's Twitch, YouTube, Patreon, GameWisp, Designed by Humans, whatever. We're just talking because we know these entities out there, right? So whether you're doing merchandise through any of those third-party sites available, you have to have a brand that's really worth, people wanting to buy your merchandise to wear first, right? And also fully realize that the portion that you make off of a single shirt sale is not going to be what you think, right?
Something like 12 to 20%, if I recall.
Yeah. So if it's a $25 shirt, high side you're making $5, right? So that's kind of the stuff you need to realize that, okay, even if
and you're not going to sell 100 shirts to 3 viewers.
Yeah. Well, you could, but like that's unless you have somebody that's, those 3 viewers are your mom, your grandma, and then your 2 grandmas, and they're buying 30 shirts each to give to their friends, right?
But again, at that point, don't do shirts. Just have them give you money directly.
That is true also, right? So, yeah. But our point then is that, like, a lot of these they scale, right? These monetization options scale with your own viewership and your own following, right? We joke all the time about selling your brand, your business shirts, like it depends, or you are the goods, or something like that. I don't think, okay, we may do it, but that would just be for laughs. We're not going to anticipate those t-shirt sales are going to be anything meaningful as far as revenue goes for this show. Like, I can tell you right now, we do this show because we're giving up time to do this show. Right, so we do it because we believe that it's a good marketing tool for us and our respective services, and also that it's a valuable service. We do this because we want to help the industry grow. We don't do this. So when Galen and I were talking about the show, and then we were talking about Loco about bringing the show to StreamerSquare, the idea of it being financial compensation was never in the conversation, right?
The only time there was ever a something is when Amazon briefly approached me and said, hey, maybe we could do an affiliate thing with some tax software stuff. And then it was like, nah.
Yeah. Right. And we're not even getting into the potential legal and ethical ramifications for our industries when it comes to dealing branded stuff. Right. So our point is that even though we have a growing following right here on StreamerSquare for your brand, your business.
That's ambitious of you.
Yeah. We are by no means anticipating, if we sold t-shirts, that it would be, I can take my wife out to a nice meal, right? Let's be honest. Even if we sold 10 t-shirts, I still can't take my wife out to McDonald's, okay? So it's kind of important to keep these realistic expectations in mind, especially because I feel like streamers and those especially growing content creators can be extremely doe-eyed's not really the right word. Rose-colored glasses, right? They definitely look at things through rose-colored glasses, and it sucks. It absolutely sucks when reality hits them 3 years later, and that they turn into these huge bags of cynicism, right? Because that's inevitably what always happens, right? This is the new media version of trying to go to Hollywood and make it as a big actor, and then end up being, like Galen said earlier, a waitress. And there's definitely much worse ways that could go than becoming a waitress.
So I'm thinking right now, I have shirts from several different shirts, hoodies, that kind of thing, from several different content creators. And I'm trying to think of the one who's the smallest in terms of concurrence from that group. Has probably 150 concurrence to 170 concurrence, right? So if you're thinking in terms of monetization for these second tier ones, the smallest that comes to mind for me for having bought a shirt is 170 concurrents.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, like, or if you were giving guidelines, which generally I don't like to give guidelines because situations can matter so much, right? So, like, if you want to ask us about your specific situation, feel free to message us. Actually, here I'm just going to link our respective Twitters right now. That's probably an easy way to not get rid of us. You can't get rid of us. We're here forever. Right?
What?
That's a easy way to get in touch with us. So to ask us specific questions, and I'm happy to kind of do information sharing and whatnot.
Yeah.
But if you were really pushing me for a guideline on when I think merchandise actually makes sense, definitely not before affiliate, right? Even if we're talking like
The bar is so low. If it's before partner, you'd
like,
have to.
I would say probably not
engaged.
even before partner.
That's what I'm saying. If it was before, then you'd have to have like a hyper engaged community.
Yes, yeah.
And you would have had to have like a while of that making sense and them probably clamoring for it for that to make sense.
Well, and this is kind of when we say, well, let me qualify this a little bit. We're talking about selling merchandise as a means of meaningful revenue, right? If you're talking about selling merchandise just to show support for one another, and like, that if we ever did merchandise for your brand, your business, that would be it. It wouldn't be for revenue. It'd just be to say like,
so we could have shirts.
Yeah, it'd be so we could have shirts, and so we could say like, hey, now I have a cool shirt with my logo or my show's logo on it, or like, and we can see our fellow viewers, and just a way of kind of giving back to our viewers. Revenue would not be on the list of considerations.
We're getting off track though here of the knowing your worth. The basics of it are.
Well, no, because that's part of it, right? That's part of knowing your worth is that you should realize at a certain level, and I hate to put it this way because it sounds like you're worthless, right? I'm not trying to say you're worthless. You haven't hit that. You haven't, and when we say worth, it's not like your intrinsic value, right? And I know it should go without saying, but I'm not talking about like your value as a human or anything like that. I'm talking about your value as a brand, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is definitely still is talking about knowing the value of your brand. Let's just put it that way. To get even merchandising requires a certain value to your brand. And merchandising, I would say, is a step below actual sponsorships. So if your brand isn't at the point where it's valuable enough to generate meaningful merchandise as revenue, then you need to think about going back to your business plan and seeing how do you develop that brand first? How do you develop what else do you need to do before you can get to that sponsorship level?
Yeah.
Right? Because the next form that we're talking about, knowing your worth, and that's talking about metrics, right? The actual calculation of metrics when it comes to selling your viewership, selling your how many impressions you get. That doesn't mean anything if nobody is willing to buy your viewership.
Yeah. You know what? I would totally agree with that. That having that like if you're going to work up in terms of a step-by-step process, the first would be affiliate deals like we talked about, because you can pretty much always get those because it's zero risk to the company. Like if you sell something for them, they get most of it, right? You can get Amazon affiliate links and stuff like that for pretty much any time. Like just go do, or what do they call it, affiliate? I don't remember. Associate affiliate, something like that.
I think it's like I can't remember.
It's an affiliate.
Yeah.
But you definitely start with that, because the whole point of this, and the big point of knowing your worth that we're kind of building towards, is you need to build up actual data in terms of metrics of what you can pull from Twitch in terms of your viewership and things like that. But then also what that converts to in terms of sales for, first an affiliate, then potentially for merchandise, right? But like you could have, if you have 100 concurrent viewers, and anytime you do a new affiliate thing, 10 of them buy stuff, like that's pretty valuable, right? Yeah. Like a 10% conversion rate is incredible. But if you had 1,000 viewers and 10% and 10% buy, a 1% conversion rate is still pretty damn good, right? Like depending on what the thing itself is and how much you charge for it. So a big part of why you progress through some of these things over time in terms of knowing your worth is these are the stats that you can bring to a potential partner,
Exactly.
and I don't mean like Twitch partner, I mean like partner for monetization, to point to, oh, hi, I'm not Lyric, but here's like some of the stats from my community, and here's why it might make sense to work together, right?
Exactly.
There'll
Yeah.
be a tipping point where people are reaching out to you, and then you have to vet. But when you're starting out and you're the one doing most of the reach out, then you are also responsible, if you want that to succeed, for bringing this data and meaningfully talking about it.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, let's put it this way:
Progression.
if I'm a sponsor and I'm looking for people to sponsor, right? The first thing I would want to look for is, high viewership. What kind of reach can I get with my dollars, my marketing dollars, right? I want to get to as many people as possible. But really, the end goal of any advertising is sales, right? So
Yep.
I want to reach as many people as possible because a percentage of that is going to be a known percentage of that is going to end up being sales, right? So the more people I reach, the higher number of sales I have. Well, why is merchandise important and affiliate link and stuff like that important? Even if I was, let's go back to that example that 100 shirts sold off of 3 viewers. That is crazy conversion, right? But if that was actually your experience, then I can, even if I'm only getting 3 viewers, but I can go to XYZ t-shirt company and say, yeah, I'm only getting 3 viewers, but they bought 100 damn shirts, right? So now that is crazy sales and crazy conversion. That is a meaningful metric.
If you could
for
show
to
that a couple times, I guess I'd say, if you came to me with that once and I was the vendor, I'd be like, what happened?
Yeah,
But if
yeah.
you came to me and you had like 6 campaigns where that happened, I'd be like, okay.
Yeah, yeah. At that point,
I'll
I'm
look at this
putting
again.
serious consideration into you, right? So,
Mhm.
and again, this is the reason we side with the plan and with your projection is because eventually your plan and your projection is also something that goes into your presentation deck. And then at that point, that's when you're shopping yourself out to other parties, to sponsors, right? And you can't shop yourself if you don't even know what your brand is first. That's why that's why we spent that much time in the beginning of the show talking about building your business first, right? So stuff like affiliate links show conversion, how many sales you were able to generate off of a link. Merchandise sales also shows conversion, how many t-shirts you were able to sell, or beanies or socks or whatever. We should get pocket protectors or something like that. But no one even wears shirts with pockets in this industry anymore, so pocket protectors wouldn't do anything. I went way off topic and trying to think about like what kind of your brand, your business stuff we can get branded. But anyway, back to what I was saying. So whatever merchandise you're selling, how many units you can sell is also a big determination of what your value and your worth might be as a brand, right?
Yep.
So other things that are also good indications of what your brand is. If you do have a Game Wisp or if you do have a Patreon, how many patrons you have, how many subscribers you have. Even if you're only getting, 150 concurrents average for your viewership, but you have 1,000 sub points, that is really good conversion, right? Or
Well,
that's really good sales. That's really
Let's
good.
look in chat. Resorty, you have what? 100, 110 concurrents a lot of the time, but several hundred sub points. Like, that is a deeply engaged community to me, right? If I'm looking at that from the outside, that's like, nice job.
Yeah, I mean, like, well, I don't want to get into anyone's specific numbers, but we're like that. These are the hypotheticals we're giving you. So these are all indications of how you can kind of sell yourself, right? Where a lot of, and if you don't know about like how you can kind of check these metrics for Twitch, you should be familiar with this website right here. It's called twinge.tv. If you don't know what twinge.tv is, that's the first, here, free advice right there. That's the first step in knowing what your metric, what your worth is. That helps you determine what your average viewership is, how many followers you have. You mean even your own stream analytics are a good measurement of that, right? Tells you how many chatters you had, how many, even like.
Ooh, you all right there?
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm still getting over a cold. But right before that cough cut me off, what I was trying to say is that social media has the same kind of tools. YouTube has the same kind of tools. Twitter will tell you how many impressions that you get. What you want to become intimately familiar with are the analytics for every single platform that you're on, because that is the information that will help you to know and accurately price what your worth is and to sell yourself that way, right? So once you're familiar with those analytics, then we start talking about metrics like CPM or CPVM, right? So CPM is called cost per thousand impressions, right? So M being, I've heard it both ways. I've heard because M is the Roman numeral.
It's Mila.
Yeah, it's Mila, which is Latin for 1,000, but M is also the Roman numeral for 1,000, right? So it's pretty much the same thing. CPM is the cost per 1,000 impressions, right? So if you kind of want to get an idea of how much an accurate CPM is right now, CPMs for stuff in the Twitch and YouTube space is about $3.50 to $4, right? So if that sounds shockingly low, it's because it is low, right? So the whole adpocalypse or ad revenue thing and YouTube monetization, why those were such large news and why industries like Patreon and GameWisp exist in the first place is because creators needed alternative revenues for monetization, right? And the reason they need alternative revenues for or avenues for monetization is because ad revenue alone won't cut it. That absolutely won't cut it. So think about it that way. If you had 1 million views on YouTube and like you had a YouTube video that went viral and it got 1 million views, like let's just hope you were in a position where you actually had monetized that view in the first place.
You already had the, what is it, like 1,000 followers and 4,000 hours watched or whatever?
Or like even if you were a YouTube partner, if your video wasn't demonetized before it got all those views, right? So let's just say, which is exceedingly rare, that all 1 million of that was monetized views, right? At $4 for CPM, you made $4,000, right? Is that correct? How's my math here? I don't know why we keep doing math on this show.
I'm not going to do math live.
Yeah. All right. You know what? I'm going to bust out my Windows calculator.
I mean, I've got one. Run the numbers by me. I've got my financial calculator that I always
CPM is $4. You hit 1 million views.
Oh, gotcha. That's 4,000.
Yeah. So
that math I can do because 1 million is just 1,000 times 1,000.
Yeah. Right. So my mental math was there. It's not that bad yet, right? So you made $4,000, which is a pretty nice chunk of change, right? But how many million views do you need to accurately to support yourself over a year, and assuming that all of your views were adequately monetized, right? So let's say even if you wanted to live off of 24K a year, which isn't great, right, by any means. If you wanted to live off 24K a year, you would have to have 6 million views a year on YouTube. And we all know how hard it is to get
and that's
a lot of views, right?
No expenses, no taxes.
Yeah, right? So, I mean, like that's... Let me put it this way. When we were doing research and preparation for this show, and I found time and time again that new media companies, and we're talking about like people that are managing YouTubers and content creators, when they are actively telling you don't rely on YouTube monetization as your sole income, then you know that you don't rely on YouTube monetization as your sole income. Same goes for Twitch ad revenue, right? So, I mean, like how many Twitch streamers do actually run ads? They have that option, but how many like are actively running ads?
The only times I've seen it are like a large streamer with several thousand viewers who is taking a bathroom break.
Yeah. And
right?
this is assuming that you actually saw it because 1, you weren't subbed, 2, you didn't have ad blocker running, right? And
I never see it because I always have an ad blocker running, and I also
so the fact that ad blocker is so prevalent also in that it's like a default setting in just about every single internet browser means that really monetization is not.
I actually do have my ad blocker turned off on Twitch, to be fair.
I do also, right? But like it's just that that advertising revenue is not going to be your bread and butter by any means. So that's why you need to turn towards things like brand deals and sponsored content, right? So now we're talking about sponsorship or advertising that's not just the pre-roll, the mid-roll, or the end roll of a video, but you're saying this video is someone. I mean, if you listen to podcasts, you'll always hear this podcast is thanks to our sponsors from so and so, right? Or this video is brought to you by so and so, or they have banners running all over their YouTube content, or
every once in a while. Like Brian Kibler will have the start of his video be something for Amazon coins, and it's not just hi, buy Amazon coins, but it's a whole bit, right?
Yeah.
The point
Yeah,
is
there's
like
a script.
a lot of work to make it something that you watch as opposed to just
Yeah. So that's called a brand deal, right? So now all of a sudden you need to know how to accurately price your brand deal or your sponsorship. Well, what are the metrics that sponsors are going to look for? Like we mentioned earlier, the first one is reach, right? So if they're talking about, if they can't measure how many views were on your video, then they have to see how many followers you have. What are your average concurrent viewers, right? How
Mhm.
long are you streaming for? So like, you know, if I'm streaming to 1,000 people for 1 hour, or am I streaming to 100 people for 10 hours, right? So that's the same kind of impressions there. Um, so
right, same impressions, but potentially very different outcomes.
yeah, so like that. If we're using CPM as just the sole gauge there, then that is in those two scenarios it would be the same, right? But then we're not talking about knowing worth there, but at the very least you need to know how many impressions you're
Yes.
getting, right?
Yes.
So same goes for Twitter, or if you're a Instagram model or whatever it is, right? So that goes to how many likes you're getting, how many people, how many followers you have, what's your
Hmm.
engagement. Find out how you can determine the analytics on that. I know how to find the Twitter analytics. I know how to find Twitch analytics. I'm not an Instagram model, so I don't know how to find Instagram analytics, right? So don't ask me that one. I can't. I'm not able to help you there.
Technically,
Yeah.
there exists a Buff Your Finances Instagram. In that, I grabbed it just so that I could have the name, but I've never used it. So I know nothing about Instagram. I apologize.
Okay, so between Galen and I'm closer to Insta model status than Galen is.
You
Because
are.
while I do have an Instagram and I do post pictures, I just don't know how to do anything else besides post pictures and do some hashtags for discoverability. Yeah. So,
Yeah, I say get Lydia on there.
yeah, I can make baby Ella on Insta model. Yep. Child labor laws be damned, right? So,
Is it really labor?
and plus I'm the parental guardian, so I'm okay there. But still, anyway, that's
What
way
are
off
those
topic.
called?
Now we're getting
What are those
into
called?
So
Oh,
determining your viewership and your impressions, that's how you
yes.
can then gauge your how would you price a tweet, or how would you price a sponsored tweet or a sponsored
Hmm.
Instagram post, right? Another a metric unique to Twitch and YouTube is the metric called cost per viewer minute. Right? This is really unique to live streaming, right? So I'm going to post. Um, there's is a tweet that was popular this week because of the release of the Twitch bounty board stuff,
Oh,
right?
yeah,
So this is if you aren't familiar with OPG, OPG is an agency that works a lot with Twitch streamers, and
They
actually,
have some
full
cool
disclosure,
analytical
although we don't,
tools.
Loco is a OPG client. This is a tweet from the CEO of OPG, which is Omid, and this is kind of talking about what the current brand status is.
Yeah.
Um,
Every
so
time I talk to one of their AMs, I'm very jealous of the analytics that they have.
yeah, so there
That
and
they
so
paid to develop. I mean, I'm not gonna, I'm not,
I mean, like there's definitely a lot of analytical tools out there, right? So
yeah.
it's in your interest as a content creator to know as many of them as possible, because that's how you know your business. But
Yep.
to excuse me, to that post that I just posted. So to that link I just posted rather, he talks about what kind of accurate cost per viewer minutes are right now, right? So when we said earlier that CPM isn't really the same, because then you also have to measure by how many minutes they're viewing, right? So if I am one viewer, but I'm in your stream for 10 hours, that's a lot of different impressions that I could get. So rather than doing CPM, I'm doing CPVM, which is cost per viewer minute. And then the rate he was giving there for 2010 is about 1.5 to 2 cents per CPVM, right? And do understand that CPM and CPVM rates will always change, right? So
Yeah.
as more streamers are out there, that rate might come lower because there's more and more people available. But at the
Well,
same time, once brands are realizing the value of having influencer sponsored streams, or influencer, like big influencers playing their games, or big influencers mentioning the brands, whatever, what have you, those rates might go up too. So there's a lot of things that you have to be aware of what the current rates are, because they do change.
There are also personal factors to that too. If you're
Yes.
someone who doesn't need a deal, for instance, or you, again, for the biggest on Twitch, they get to be very selective, and I bet you their rates are higher than that because they're sought after and they have enough in the pipeline that they can ask for more, and someone will probably pay it.
Yeah,
And it may be less for you if you're smaller. That's just sort of the reality of it.
So there is, and do know that these things aren't set in stone, right? So it's not
Right.
like if someone comes to me and if I'm talking with a sponsor on behalf of a client or anything like that, and I could say, well, current CPMs are this, so you should be paying this. If the sponsor doesn't actually want to pay it, then they don't have to pay it, right? So it's actually whatever the sponsor wants to pay, and part of what the sponsor is willing to pay will also be how well you can sell it, right? So I can say things like, this person might not be getting as many impressions as you would like, but look at their conversion. Or this person might not be able to get as many impressions as you like, but look at how well they fit this brand, right? So how well they could be a spokesperson for this brand, right? So everything, branding is important, because I mean, there's also content out there, or there's articles that we've seen in the past where streamers or game developers were absolutely, like lambasting the prices that they paid for actual branded content, right? So there's going to be, the difficulty here is that in this being a new industry, and not just that it's new media, but now we're talking about like new types of sponsorship and deals, all of this stuff is constantly changing. So that's why it can be very difficult to know your brand, or to know your worth rather. But you're only doing yourself a disservice if you aren't familiar with the tools and the language and the terms that are discussed and used commonly when we're talking about the business side of things, right? And at some point, it's going to be worth your time, rather than keeping up with all this information by yourself, getting a manager and agent to do that, right? That's going back to the outsourcing that we talked about earlier. But in the very beginning, when you are, let's just say, in the mid-tier, where you're not quite at the point where you can, where you might not be able to sign an agent, or you might not be able to find a manager, then you do have to do a lot of this by yourself, and to be familiar with that by yourself. It's the same way as
bounty boards will help with that. I don't know.
So the Twitch bounty boards, and that was kind of big news this week, because it talked about a way that Twitch partners would be able to kind of sidestep this manager and agency portion, whether that's because they don't want to deal with one, or they don't know how to deal with it, right? So that is a very, think about it as any mission, right? That's what it is, right? You have a spot on your Twitch dashboard which says, this is what's available to you right now if you want to take this as a bounty. And I think there's a lot of potential there, but there's also a lot of potential complications there, right?
Well,
so we'll definitely
the biggest deals aren't going to be going through that, right? Like, the really big deals aren't going to be going through that. Doesn't mean there'll be bad deals, but I think there's going to be a certain population that it's appropriate for. That's not going to be everyone.
Yeah. So I mean, that's definitely going to be an interesting feature. And then I think it will have impacts across the board, though, like whether the big deals, small deals, whatever. But then, I can definitely see it being where a developer tried the bounty board, didn't like the kind of content that they ended up getting as a result of going through the bounty board, and then maybe they want to find somebody who is more tailored to their campaign, right? If I'm, think of the bounty board this way: if I was a sponsor and now I was going through the bounty board, the only thing I care about there is how many people are watching my impressions, right? So it's just, we're not even talking about the quality of impressions, but we're doing strict quantity, right? So that's what the bounty board is. If I was looking for, an actual relevant spokesperson, I was looking for somebody who would bring a good image to my brand, and bring a good, goodwill, good brand awareness and everything like that, I probably would go through an agency to make sure I'm getting someone who's well fit.
But again, another piece of it too might be that this could be for the brands that aren't as familiar with Twitch, right? So they don't know who to go to, or they don't have someone on their team who does influencer relations. I could totally see that.
I could see that. I mean, I would argue that if that was the case, they're probably better off going through an agency, somebody who is familiar with Twitch.
I would say so as well, but they may not even know who to go to.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of ways that Twitch can use the bounty board, and at this point, it's all speculation and hypotheses on how it works. But at least if it did anything that was good, it drove the conversation about knowing what your value is as a brand. And that's the point of this portion of the show right now. You have to know your metrics first, right? So we introduced the idea of metrics, and we didn't introduce. We talked about the idea of metrics and which metrics you should be familiar with, and then kind of how to determine that, and gave you some and like, I'm not saying you can quote us on what these rates are. Just these are figures that we've seen, and we've seen others in the industry speak about for their rates.
Yeah, well, and these factors all go together that we've been talking about. You need to have some past experience with campaigns. Good game agency logo. You need to have some experience with a couple previous campaigns, maybe of your own design. You need to have some other things that you can reference it to for merchandise. You need to have your own stats on viewership, and then engagement. You need to have then what those sort of industry standards rates are for the CPM, CPVM, that kind of stuff. And then you also need to have your brand information on, do you make sense for the game? I'm going to use Resorty as an example because I watch him all of the time. Every once in a while, he streams League. If I'm someone who's looking for a League sponsorship, he's not the one I'm going to pick. But he always streams games like RimWorld, Frostpunk, that kind of thing. So if I'm coming out with a colony sim, he's a great choice for that, right? And he needs to know those things when he's approaching advertisers so that he can show, this is why I make sense. And it's all of those like numbers that we talked about that are actually like discrete numbers, but then it's also the branding side of it that gives you that extra bump, that extra push that makes you really shine in these kinds of situations. And so when you're talking about knowing your worth, it's all of those together, and then you put that all on a pitch deck that you put together, and that's what you take to people, and you can take it as confidently as possible, right? If you know these numbers that help you know your worth and why. That's my tirade.
Yes, yeah, and I think, and this kind of like, we explained both what options are available for capitalizing on that value and knowing your worth, right? And capitalizing on your worth. This is not to say that we're the end all experts or anything like that. In fact, I would say the people that you should first see and talk to are, they actually had Omid on an episode of Stream Scene. I was like, go check out that one.
In general, OPG Loaded, even there are some smaller ones too, like Inception Talent and things like that have a lot more direct experience with this kind of thing.
So there are resources out there. We're just trying to kind of give you a primer, if you will, into some of the resources and exactly, having watched, if you are able to watch this and then go talk to an agent or an agency or anything like that, then you're able to understand more about what it is they're talking about. Yeah. Right. So just know that like revenue is it's a sliding scale, right? So you start off with some options available. The bigger you get, the more options you have available. It's the same as a skill tree in a game or any kind of like civilization if you're advancing your technologies, right? So, but that's kind of beyond. In the very beginning, what your value is, what's available to you is stuff that's going to be largely dependent on how well you can sell yourself. Meaning, how well you can get people to use your affiliate link, how well you can get people to sub, how many patrons you can get, right?
And to tie it back even earlier, if we're going to keep using the Civ analogy, which I'd love to do, I love Civ. When we talked about building out your business plan, having your vision and things like that, that's knowing what your win condition is, right? So in Civ, you might choose, if you're going to be building along a certain path, and you need to unlock the previous steps in the path before you are going on later, right? You need to have combustion before you can do rocketry. Well, you need to know whether or not you care about a science victory, so if rocketry actually matters at all to you. So if you're going to go all the way back to building your business and then knowing your worth, that's a really important piece. Envisioning what is it that you're going to stream and why you're going to stream, and is it something that you really love? Envisioning, how do you want to build your business? Will this be something you do 4 hours a day and you don't expect to make a ton from it, but it's enough to support you? Will you be making Twitch millions like Loco? Will it just be a hobby? Who knows, right? You need to plan that out all from the start. And then once you have that plan and you start to implement it, you build these stats that we've been talking about along the way so that you can put together an idea of your worth when you're taking it to a potential sponsor.
I'm
So it's
impressed.
all along.
I'm
These all
impressed
tie
how
together, we swear.
yeah. I'm impressed how in depth you went with that analogy.
I have played a lot of Civ.
And also, being a fellow Civ nerd, that's the only reason why I understood it, and I could see why now chat's like I'm lost. Right?
I have
Galen,
played
you
a
lost
lot
me.
of Civ.
Yeah, but yes, just to kind of give you a translation of what Galen was saying in his Civ nerd talk, you need to know what your end goal is going to be before you can figure out what actual monetization options make sense, right? Or even if you want to go the monetization route, there. So, but let's see what else. What else did we want to talk about as far as monetization goes? I think we talked about quite a bit, right? We talked about,
I'm gonna self promote briefly. So we talked a bit about the fact that a lot of these things are numbers driven,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And I would say that on average we are pretty bad at doing sufficient mental math to know how those numbers translates into dollars. So I actually wrote an article. Basically, I wrote an article because I had another financial planner who knows that I work with streamers, see Ninja on CNBC and approach me, just being like, "Hey, that's so cool! I saw this thing," because he knows that I do it. He's a bit of a mentor of mine.
Yeah.
And my response was, "Oh, boy, they said he's making $500,000 a month with his current numbers. They're dramatically underestimating what he's making." And I wrote up why, just that I sent to him in an email. And then he said,
he was saying he made $500,000, but he was saying that was just off of Twitch revenue, though.
Sure, he is.
Yeah.
And so I wrote that up in an email. He's like, "All right, you need to write this up in an article just for general education." So what I did is that, but then I also put it to a couple different sizes of content creators to show how dramatically it scales up if you've got his numbers, but also how dramatically it scales down if you don't. So you need to do this kind of math where if you know your stats and you know a reasonably appropriate CPVM for yourself, actually run the numbers and see what it looks like, because it doesn't scale as nicely as you'd hope, right?
Yeah.
It really doesn't. Until you're big, just like acting, right? Again, like we said, I've got a lot of really attractive, probably gifted waiters here in LA, but there are also people making a lot of money doing it, and you need to know where you are on the scale. And if you're trying to build all the way up to there, you need to have these plans, but then also a realistic view of what it'll look like along the way. Because otherwise you're setting yourself up for a lot of disappointment. And if you're setting yourself up for disappointment, you're probably not going to be as enthusiastic or engaging of a streamer, which means you're putting yourself in a pretty nasty cycle.
Yeah. And I think
criticism.
Yeah. So like definitely the number side, that's Galen's ballpark, right? That's where that's Galen's stomping grounds. But like, so you don't have to be Galen to know your own business, right? So in fact, you should hire the Galen to know your business. But before you get to that point, like when you're hiring people to help you figure out this analytics, you do need to know some of it yourself, right? If nothing else, so you can have a meaningful conversation with Galen and actually understand what he's talking about. Not like if you didn't play Civ, right? But so that's kind of what we were trying to get to now. Know what your monetization options are in the beginning. Know that they won't be that much in the very beginning. They will largely depend on your own reach and how well you can sell yourself. But that's stuff you need to practice anyway. That's stuff you need to learn how to get to do well, because when it comes to later on sponsorships, guess what? You're still selling yourself. You're selling yourself as to the sponsors so that you can sell something for them. Right.
Yep. And if you know these things, you can also position yourself for way better success in terms of just batting average, because if you know a reasonable amount to ask for and can back it up with numbers, that's going to make someone more likely to go with you. You aren't asking for something too crazy high, but you also aren't screwing yourself by asking for something too crazy low, potentially.
Yeah.
And it is something that you're probably going to have to do for yourself early on, and it's not fun to do necessarily. It's a lot of work. I mean, and you can pull these analytics that show Twinge and Twitch's own analytics and stuff like that. But you should still put in the effort to do it if there's something that you actually want to build out on your own, or build into a business, because you'll be helping yourself a lot.
Yes.
A lot.
Yeah. Just while we finish up, while we're ending now, I wanted to post one last resource available. And while this ties to a little bit more about YouTube creators, there's two reasons for that I'm bringing this. First, I want you to be kind of familiar with the Internet Creators Guild, which is kind of as close to as a content creators union as you will right now. But it's basically, it's a content creator organization that is nonprofit, and the point that of the purpose of the ICG is that they want to help make this type of information more readily available.
Yep.
Well, that's largely for YouTube creators. Now, if you're watching this on our YouTube video, then this works for you, right? If you're here watching this on our stream, or if you're here in chat right now, it's still good to know some of the kind of, while it's not an exact parallel industry, it is a very closely related one. And there's one piece of information in there that I wanted to highlight, and it's that the importance of brand deals versus monetization. With Twitch, you also get the tips and the Patreon and the subscription side of it, but then do know that brand deals are going to become, that's kind of the future direction of monetization of content creation, if you will.
Oh yeah.
Right. So they are basically saying that they surveyed 100 different channels or 100 different professional creators about brand deals, and while the information that they were able to get and the rates and just kind of shared information, there's very little knowledge sharing and transparency, unfortunately, on the content creator side. Some of that's going to be legal because there's confidentiality clauses in contracts and stuff like that, and then just generally, talking about finances can be a kind of a hush topic where people don't really want to share, because really in for this industry, it's basically sharing your salary, right? But what I'm trying to point out here is that right now, brand deals, and this is kind of a dated article already too, in that it came out in June of last year, but over 50% of the content creators they surveyed made the majority of their income from brand deals.
Yeah.
And that's,
several large streamers have said that they're already getting most of their income from things like hosting gigs and brand deals, and not Twitch revenue.
Yeah. So that's kind of like where viewership dollars, and I say viewership dollars as in tips and subscriptions, those will be, those are always going to be increasingly competitive, because we talked about that crazy high number of affiliates out there and the very high number of partners out there. So of course, we're all hoping that Twitch's viewership grows, and it's also that its viewership has more money to spend around on supporting its creators. But do you realize that those dollars are highly sought after and highly I don't want to say like fully competed over, because it's not like it operates in a vacuum. It's not that if one viewer gives us $1, they don't have $1 to give Loco, right? But then, that's to say that there is some amount of competition there, right? That's just the nature of the market. But brand deals are a way to kind of supplement, or if not fully substitute, those viewership dollars. And really, that's where you can get a lot of value once you are able to demonstrate what your brand is worth. Right? So, any other questions for us before we kind of wrap up the show regarding any of it, any of the building your brand, your drafting a business plan, finding out what your business philosophy is, reevaluating your business plan and your business philosophy, or knowing your worth? Like, talk about metrics, talk about different forms of partnership, different forms of sponsorship and monetization. Really, any questions about that for us here from chat?
So Wes's question on what kind of things do streamers need to be aware of when seeking a brand deal, since as we talked about, this is an emerging area without as many resources as might be in a more established area. Big piece of it is the number stuff that we just talked about. So sort of knowing an approximation of the value of your stream based on some of the metrics that we listed off. Another piece of it would be, I'd say, like, be very careful about, and Joel can talk about this a lot more, but be very careful about the contract that you're signing. Because it's first of all, make sure you're signing a contract.
Yes.
And again, not the lawyer here, Joel is, but then really dig into it, because you don't want to be like, giving someone who's giving you $100 permanent access to use your image.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Eventually, your likeness will be worth something more than just a free T-shirt or free game code. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of things that you want to be cognizant of when you're signing those contracts. Definitely, the first one being there should be a contract, right? Also, and like Galen was saying, a lot of those things that we brought up earlier, knowing what metrics you are, so knowing what kind of rates you can command, right? So if I don't know anything about my brand, I can't accurately price my brand, right? You
Right.
have to be able to do that when you're looking for sponsors. And also, if you can demonstrate that you have that much of an intimate knowledge about your business side, your analytics, that is definitely going to be impressive to the sponsor, right? They're going to know that this is somebody who we can put our trust in when it comes to sponsorship because they are aware of the business side of things, right?
Yep. Well, and part of knowing that contract is knowing what you need to deliver too. Like,
Yes. Yeah.
making sure that you are actually able to do the things that are called for in the contract, because you don't want to mess it up, right? Like,
Yes.
you don't want to have them expect one thing and you expect something else, and then have there be some like bad blood or
Or
that kind of,
miscommunication. Exactly.
yeah, right? Because it can just literally be miscommunication.
Yeah,
and
you want to know what the actual deliverables you have are. You want to know
Yep.
how you need to give them those deliverables. You
you
also
wanna
want to know
follow up
how
on
you can be paid, right? The contract has to
Yeah.
talk about how you're going to be paid, the format, the timing of it, everything.
Well, and yeah, on the like business admin side too, you should follow up with the sponsor, you know, like send them a thing being like, hey, I'm doing the thing that we agreed on. Like, if you're about to go do a sponsored stream or something like that, and then as you're going through it, if it's a longer term thing, say, be in communication. Are we meeting the expectations that you set? Is there anything that's not going like planned? Blah blah blah. And then after the fact, get information from them on the kinds of numbers that they saw, so that you can incorporate that into your own metrics.
Yeah.
But then also so you can talk about potentially, like, were there things that went different from how they expected? Were there things that seemed to work particularly well? All those kinds of things. You just like we talked about with the business plan, you want to be able to reflect back on it and do what you'd call in project management a post-mortem on
Yes.
it, but just a what worked, what didn't, why, what could change for the future, because that helps a lot.
Yeah, think of it as a debrief. And the importance of doing a good debrief is, one, you show how professional you are. Two, that makes them more likely to, if it went well, that makes them more likely to go back to you for a future sponsorship. Right?
You're helping them remember how well it went.
Yeah. Sponsorships aren't, typically they're not one-offs, right? So there are many one-offs, but if you do it well, then you're hoping that it won't be a one-off.
Yeah. So, and Wes, for the second question, I'll let Joel answer that because he's the lawyer.
No worries. And yeah, so the question was, have you ever needed a lawyer to help explain a contract from a sponsor, or is something you feel you can understand yourself for the most part? Excuse me. I will say this, and I'm probably biased in this regard. Never be afraid to speak to a lawyer about any contract that you get, right? A lot of lawyers will offer free consultations. I do. So if you do get a contract, then they'll give you a ballpark on how long it takes for a document review. So that's what it is. This is a contract review. Also, you want to be, sometimes you definitely read the contract yourself, but if some contracts are written very nicely and they're easy to understand, some contracts definitely aren't, right? Yeah. Even sometimes the nice ones might have something that, even if it's written easily, then you can easily understand how much they're screwing you over, right? So because basically you still want to understand what the actual contract says and what the terms mean. So I would always say, you should talk to a lawyer about every single contract you get, right? Knowing that that's a lawyer saying that. If we're talking about, like, on a general basis, at the very least, be aware of what they're asking for in the contract, and besides just the deliverables, like, be aware of what they're requiring. And lawyers are not as expensive as you would think, and really most of the time, if you go see a good lawyer, they're worth what you're paying, especially for the sponsorship.
I'd agree with that.
Right.
Yep.
And yeah, no worries, no apologies. The reason that we do this show, and the reason we're happy to get questions and to answer your questions, even if it's something we talked about before, is that a lot of the times we're hoping anyway, that our information is worth repeating. So it is worth us repeating to say it again. And, some people might just be watching this on VOD, which if you are, thank you very much for watching this on VOD. And please do feel free to tune in and catch us when we are live on Twitch/StreamerSquare, most Sundays at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific.
Before we close out, we had one more question.
Yes.
About what would be valuable college courses that could go hand in hand with content creation. Anything branding and marketing would be good.
Yep.
I'd say also personal bias here again, but I'd say something like an accounting class would be very useful, since at least early on you're probably going to be doing your own accounting.
Yes, I would second that.
I'm trying to think of
really just think about what courses will be useful for anyone that's in a small business, right? It doesn't even have to just be content creation. It's just marketing, because you have to do so much of your own marketing. You have to do so much of your own finances and accounting, so financial literacy courses, right? Even communication, knowing how to contact or to speak with your viewers, knowing how to speak with your network, with your fellow peers, knowing how to be professional with the people you're not quite vendors, right? And I'm trying to think of traditional business terms, but your vendors and your service providers, which in this case would be your platforms and your potential sponsors, right? So I think I can think of very few college courses where they would have absolutely no benefit whatsoever to content creation, right? Because even if it doesn't help with the business administration, maybe it helps for your content, right? So, but yes, there's definitely some that are more helpful than others, such as your marketing classes, your some of your business administration classes.
Yep.
I don't think we're that far off from seeing a future content creation degree.
There's a university near me who is working on a basically a video game dev program, and I think a part of that is just in general new media. So it wouldn't surprise me if they have some of the more broadcasting types eventually.
Yeah. I think that is definitely new media. This is the growth of the future of new media, right?
Yep.
So, anyway, thank you so much for joining us. I think we're just at about 2 hours now. So
yes,
thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for the wonderful questions in chat. I hope this information was helpful. You can always feel free to reach out to us at those links provided here. Actually, I just realized that if we are doing this for VOD, and they're on YouTube or something where they can't see this chat, it might actually be useful for us to say our actual links. So I am Sheng at Law. That's the handle I go by on Instagram and Twitter and Twitch. That's ShenGATLAW. Feel free to find me there on Twitter, Twitch, and Instagram. And you can always send me, a DM. My messages are open, or you can reach out to questions or what have you if you would like to find out more. Otherwise, this show is brought to you by StreamerSquare. So there's a great website, a great Discord for StreamerSquare. Feel free to follow us on Twitter and Twitch, and then also to join that Discord for any questions. Galen and I are both in that Discord, so you can feel free to ping us with questions. Galen, where else can they find you?
I was to say, if you put something in the finance or your brand, your business channels in there, I will definitely notice it eventually.
Yeah.
So you can find me a couple places. Twitter, it's oh shit, I put at Chickenators in here because that's my Twitch handle, and that was a mistake on my part. It's actually at Galen HDEC, so move that at in front of my name instead of Chickenators. And then I write a blog every week on business and finance topics for streamers at pajamapantsfinance.com. And if you're just interested in my business in general, that is buffyourfinances.com.
Yeah. All right. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you so much for tuning in and for helping us. Maybe one day we will get to the point where we will actually print Your Brand, Your Business t-shirts. If nothing else, just so that we can find out who our fellow viewers are, right? Even though it probably would just be me and Galen walking around wearing those shirts.
Exactly. We'll make Tyler wear one.
Make Tyler wear one. Buy 5 of them for local. So she has to wear one every day of the working week. Yep. How about that? We're just going to buy a Your Brand, Your Business t-shirt
I've
from
got
local.
a Catalyst shirt.
Yeah, and then she could wear it on her stream, and it'll be like a sponsored stream.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll see you soon. There will not be an episode next week because next week is Mother's Day, and you should be spending it with your mothers. or your mother figures, even if that's loco, right? So there. Have a great one. Thanks, guys. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.